Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our session to learn how AWP centralizes their scheduling and dispatching to scale their field organization. My name is Aya Fawzi, and I'll be your moderator for today. I'm really excited to introduce our speakers. First, we have Matt Fairhurst, CEO and co-founder of Skedulo. Matt brings over 10 years of product and UX experience. Prior to finding Skedulo, Matt held a number of leadership roles in marketing, consulting, and design in the enterprise software and manufacturing sector. I'm really excited to introduce our two guest speakers from AWP. First is Ashish Patel. He's the Director of Strategic Initiatives. He is the technical lead and coordinates all the strategic projects for the organization. And his counterpart, Mandy Parker, who is the Director of Support Center, and she handles all the scheduling and dispatching of all their resources across their 60 offices. So this will be a great webinar to kind of hear from both the technical standpoint as well as the person who is in charge of scheduling and dispatching. Before we start the webinar, just a few housekeeping items I'd like to cover. This session is being recorded, so a link will be made available for you to share after the webinar or listen back. If you have any questions, there is a chat console box. Feel free to ask any questions throughout the webinar. We will get back to them at the end. And if you're feeling social, please go ahead and tweet #Skedulo. Without any further ado, Matt, please take it away.
Thanks, Aya. Really appreciate that, and great to be on the call with Ashish and Mandy from AWP. We've been working together for quite some time, so I'm really happy to talk about how AWP uses Skedulo and Salesforce and their journey through that over the last few years. And I'm certainly interested myself to learn a bit more about AWP and traffic management in general and its sort of important function from a public safety perspective as well. So just really quickly to introduce Skedulo and who we are. We're the leading mobile workforce management application platform. We partner very closely with companies like Salesforce.com to help businesses like AWP deliver holistic and end-to-end business operations, right from CRM functions with Salesforce and other business process through to scheduling, dispatch out to resources in the field, and then enable those resources and workers in the field to complete work and execute work as they go about their day on a mobile application, and all of that feeding back into systems like Salesforce. You can close out and close the loop around invoicing and other business functions on the tail end. So really excited to be talking to AWP today. I have the privilege of talking with a lot of our customers all over the world, and traffic management is a really interesting use case, I think, from a scheduling perspective, and I'm really keen, both Ashish and Mandy, to, I guess, learn a little bit more about AWP, and I'm sure our listeners would love to understand what you guys do, how you do it, how you've grown in the last few years, and what that's meant, and would love to hear a little bit from your perspective this morning.
Sure, Matt. Hi, everyone. This is Ashish. We can start with a brief introduction about AWP. AWP is America's leader in traffic control. One of our brand promise is we protect your people, we protect your business, and we protect your time by providing safe and compliant work zones. So we are providing temporary traffic control services in more than 19 states, and we have more than 4,000 field service personnel we called protectors, traffic control employees, that are scheduled and dispatched using Skedulo and Salesforce. And Mandy can talk more about the day-to-day operation side of that scheduling.
Thanks, Ashish. I'm happy to be here today. Thanks, everyone. We definitely have a diverse business footprint, not just temporary traffic control. We do work zone setups for long-term projects. Jumping from state to state, we really need to be very flexible with our technology solutions. So it's kind of the need there, specifically with AWP having such a diverse list of services, we cover everything from permanent signs to temporary traffic control to event services. So we kind of hit on every mark there and are continuing to grow both through acquisition and organically. So that would be kind of AWP in a nutshell.
That's really interesting. I know often when I've spoken about this story and this use case before in the past, people that I speak with are sometimes surprised by how specialized and important this function is when it comes to construction and road management during repairs and things like events, obviously, and all of your core services that you help deliver. I think an assumption sometimes is that this service can, is potentially a bit of an afterthought, and it's delivered by the construction company or the state or the city that you're doing work in. Maybe tell me a little bit more about the kind of training and the kind of specialization that your protectors and flaggers and workers in the field have, and why this function is so important when it relates to construction and work on our roads.
Sure, absolutely. It's pretty exciting with all of the growth that we've had. We've had quite a few new additions here to the support center, and part of that being, that there's not really any frame of reference. I worked in this field prior because, we are kind of kind of unique in that, you can have, all of the experience that I'm looking for, but you're not necessarily going to understand traffic control. So watching them grow and learn, it's really important for us that our training program be as thorough as possible. And one of the advantages here in the support center is that we do share a facility with field operations, so we watch that training process. Our folks go through, our new protectors coming in, go through a week's worth of training side by side with a certified trainer. They come out of that training ATSA certified. They do actually do parking lot demos and parking lot drills here and at every facility that we have, on a pretty regular basis. So we usually have a mock work zone we can drive through if we want to. So, and then kind of the other end of that spectrum would be continued education. So we do have a big focus on, how do we continue to grow our protectors and go to that next level of, certification. We recently deployed several hundred employees to storm in both Texas and Florida. So, something that people don't think about with traffic control is what happens in the event that there are situations like Hurricane Irma. And our folks are there on point with the utility companies and standing by to provide traffic control to get, those lights, up and running. So it's exciting for our folks coming in, I think, because it gives them a lot of opportunity to grow. And continue to learn, and then eventually step into roles as safety trainers themselves or into field operations, or even some of my folks, myself included, came from the field and into the support function here in the support center.
That's cool. Yeah, it's such a fascinating story, and I think such a critical function of road safety and public safety in general. And amazing that you highlighted some of those disasters that have recently happened and the importance of safety as the process is worked through to clean up and get things restored really quickly. So I'd love to know a little bit more about some of the scheduling challenges you faced. Obviously, it was a big decision to adopt Skedulo and think about a new way to schedule and assign work to the workers in the field and to protectors. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that journey and the decision points and inflection points you went through to ultimately choose this technology, and what were some of the factors in that decision-making process?
Matt, I can start on that. I think previously, over the last few years, AWP has experienced phenomenal growth through organic growth and also acquisitions. And part of the scheduling process prior to all that growth was everything was being done on paper or on a spreadsheet and locally. We had about 40 offices more than 5 years ago, and all the scheduling and dispatching was done locally. And we did, from a corporate office standpoint, we did not have any visibility to how many jobs we were performing in real time or on same day. We would get signatures from the customers and information from customer, get that paper back into office. Somebody from the office would scan it and email to corporate office. So there would be extended time delay in terms of tabulating all that data together, understanding our daily needs and what was happening out onto the field. And in addition to that challenge, looking at engaging the pipeline, how much work we have, how much work and how many people we are going to need over the next several days and next several weeks was a big challenge because all the processes were manual. We could not effectively put any reporting together in terms of business performance. And starting from when a customer calls, when does a job get scheduled, when does it get dispatched, when does the job get confirmed, when do we fulfill, when do we complete, all of that visibility. There was an extended delay in terms of us finding out and putting all of that information together, going through spreadsheets, going through paper, and somebody typing that into a spreadsheet. So that was the other part of the challenge. And Mandy can speak to the challenges that she faced being into scheduling.
Yes, Ashish kind of alluded to it, but our process was very manual. So it was spreadsheets. It was in some cases during this process, believe it or not, we came and we kind of moved office to office. We had folks doing it on whiteboards. We had a little bit of everything. And I think one of the biggest advantages for me, to this process was that it gave us an opportunity to standardize. The concept that our customers would call their contact in Georgia, many of our contractors work in multiple states. So they would call their contact in Georgia to schedule, and it was experience A, and then they would call their contact in Florida to schedule work, and they had experience B. It's the same company. It should be the same experience. So, one of those huge advantages was getting it all under one roof and getting it all within one system gave us the opportunity to then start working on standardization, because at that point we did not have any, and it was a huge struggle specifically from our customer's perspective to, what should I expect from AWP? Well, where are you calling and which person are you calling?
And Ashish, you mentioned growth a few times there. How important was the adoption of technology in order to fix some of those challenges? From the company's perspective, when it related to scale and growth, could you have achieved that same level of growth, without this, or were you reaching a point where this really needed to be addressed in order to grow as aggressively as you have?
The technological solution such as Skedulo and Salesforce was absolutely critical in terms of supporting the growth and being able to scale and also have that flexibility within the solution and the platform to be able to address any new acquisitions, any nuances that we had to incorporate. So it was absolutely critical. I don't think we would have been able to support this growth without this type of solution in place. We would have just have to add bodies every time we open up a new office or we got an additional work. As I said previously, all the scheduling was done locally. So for every office, we had a scheduling supervisor at the office, and between the scheduling supervisor and the local manager down there, they would dispatch all the jobs out to our field employees. But now we have over 70 offices and nearly half the staff.
Wow. So now that we've established that there was a pretty significant pain there and certainly a process that the company was working through as you were thinking about growth and the technology you needed in the company to support that growth, what were some of the, the process of evaluation as you went through and looked at various technologies, particularly as it relates to mobile workforce management? Are there any sort of highlights that you can talk to or key points you can talk to that you were basing your decision off, and talk a little bit about that journey, I guess, of what was important during that process to you guys as you selected technology?
one of the things that I was looking into was the flexibility that platform allowed, the ease of the transition and migration from the legacy system and process to the new system, and how easy it would make for our field employees to capture all the hours and information regarding their job, and also for the scheduling team in terms of gathering and inputting all the work orders into the system, using all the features and business rules to assign employees to those jobs and dispatching in a shorter amount of time.
I know that you you looked at you mentioned platform there as well. I think what you guys have achieved across both Skedulo and Salesforce.com has been remarkable. Were there any particular highlights in terms of the platform choice overall, and what you were looking for, I think, in terms of how that platform integrated with other systems of record that you run internally in the business, or employment systems or payroll systems?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the few points in terms of selecting Salesforce was how easy it was to integrate Salesforce with other systems. The level of security that it provided based on different roles, different profiles, and the easy access to data that we had in the system. Any data the system gathered, we would have access to, and we could easily report from that data. That was a major factor in selecting a platform. And in addition, the growth Salesforce was experiencing and the stability that it provided, we just did not want to get a platform that did not have the stability and the flexibility that we were looking for, and that played a big part in the decision for us to select Salesforce.
And when it came to Skedulo, were there any nuanced, components of your use case that were difficult to find and difficult to address in scheduling and mobile workforce management technologies? I know, obviously this industry, there's a lot of technology that exists that catered for a single technician that goes out and repairs telecommunications or very expensive assets and machinery, and they're driving around in their van with spare parts and doing a lot of that work solo. But as it relates to traffic management and AWP's use case, you're often sending groups of people with sometimes various different skill sets and levels of experience and training. Was it difficult to find a system that was able to not only look at a single resource going and doing something in the field, but looking at how groups of people and teams of people can go and perform work, and the complexity involved in that process?
Yeah, in my initial search, I had about 8 or 9 different packages that I was looking at, and I quickly realized that most of those packages and applications were catered towards single user going out and making multiple stops. So when I was looking for a scheduling system, most of those were centered around, their ROI was centered around route optimization for jobs or for employees that are doing multiple jobs, and usually one person going to multiple stops. Where Skedulo really differed and really addressed our needs were we could have one person going to one job. We typically perform one job in a day, and it's usually 2 people going in a truck with a flagging package, or we could have more than 2, anywhere from 2 to 14, 15, and sometimes 17, that would need to go out, and no other application really address those requirements without overly complicated customization.
Yeah, I think that's something very interesting that we've seen as well, as we've kind of, engaged with this market and looked at other scheduling and mobile workforce platforms that have been available. And, I think it's definitely one thing to focus on route optimization and route planning to fit as many jobs into a day for a technician as you can, and all of the complexity and nuance that goes into that problem. But I think the reality that exists in the world today and how businesses practically get work done is that that actually isn't the primary driver for a lot of businesses. I mean, in your case, it's actually unrealistic to do more than one job in a day. Typically, they're usually standing there 6 to 8 hours a day, or sometimes longer. And the main goal and driver here is not to optimize and the business's ability to get as many jobs onto as many people as they can. It's actually a much more complex and multivariable problem that you're trying to solve in that realm. But another thing we'd love to talk about is, I guess, thinking about the pain and the challenge, and the identification of that is great, and your decision-making process. That's been really interesting. But importantly, how have things changed for AWP since implementing Scheduler? We've talked a little bit about growth and the growth that it's helped facilitate. But I'd love to know a little bit more about how within the company has the adoption of this technology and the use of it over the last few years has changed things at AWP.
Mandy, you want to talk about this?
I'm sorry, I didn't want to talk over you. So when we started to roll this out, Matt, one of the driving kind of themes that we put out there for our folks who were struggling with change was that we really were doing this so that they could spend more time focusing on protecting folks in the field and accomplishing the tasks they were out there to perform versus jotting down stuff on a form or typing stuff into a tablet. So we're seeing obviously a higher level of focus out of our folks in the field, which is critical for the safety industry. So on the back end as well, there's a lot less touch in the validation back end billing process. So our billing team is able to focus on the problems versus the whole. So those instances where there's nothing wrong, those can flow through versus touching every single piece of invoicing that's coming through. That visibility to when jobs are accepted and when they're complete, where our folks are in the field. We're just starting to explore, how can we kind of key into that, from a let's look at all of our folks in the field and see where they're at aspect has been invaluable. Our customers can call now and say, unfortunately, I wish this never happened, but they can call in and say, my crew hasn't arrived yet, it's 5 after 8, and we can see that they're still traveling. We can, instantly dial into their phone number. So giving us that visibility. We can run our reports based on time and basically feed that back to our customers. So that has been a huge focus for us, is being on time and priding ourselves on our on-time performance and being able to, you don't improve if you don't know how you're doing. So we're able to feed that back to the field to say our on-time performance yesterday was 98%, which is fantastic. So how do we improve? Collecting that information in real time has been absolutely priceless. So knowing immediately when our folks are done with the job and being able to reroute them from an optimization standpoint has been fantastic. Also having that visibility to what we're doing today and how much we've done. We used to have this process called daily totals where we all keyed everything in by hand every day, so we knew how many people were in the field and how many were working. We don't need to do that anymore. And we're scheduling those 3,500 folks nightly. My support team is here 7 days a week working within the system, reassigning them as needed, which would have been completely unscalable prior to Skedulo and Salesforce.
And it sounds like there's been some massive change in the back office and administratively and scheduling activities. How much has it changed the life of the people out in the field doing the work, day to day? How different is their work activity and their hopefully job satisfaction after this journey?
Yeah, so we're able to give them real-time information. So, for our tablet holders at home, when they are dispatched their job in the evening, they can immediately go look at their job information. They're not spending valuable time in the field when they can either be interacting with our customers or setting up a compliant work zone, jotting stuff into a tablet. So, people don't realize how impactful that is until you have a customer standing there and they're impatiently waiting for you to type in all these details or write them on a piece of paper. So giving them that time back and giving them back the ability to focus on the task at hand has been fantastic for them, and we continue to look at ways to kind of fit that niche. So something that we've been talking about recently has been the concept of creating this pairing of teams. Back to the flexibility piece, we're seeing a need to try to pair our folks up so we can start looking down that road and saying, how do we better improve the experience for our folks in the field.
That's cool.
And so, from the back office perspective, too, Matt, sorry if I may, just from a back office perspective too, before Salesforce and Skedulo was implemented, our validation team was looking at every piece of paper and making sure that there were no inaccuracies or everything was filled out correctly. Now they're only looking at exceptions, so that's more than 50% reduction in their administrative time they were spending on validating these jobs.
Wow. Yeah, I think it's super encouraging to hear, particularly for those resources in the field, that this has helped them get a lot of that time back and hopefully allowed them to focus much more on public safety and the job that they have at hand, which is incredibly important. Love to expand that a little bit in this whole concept of how things have changed and dig into the results that you've seen, a little more commercially and operationally, and from a metrics point of view. What has this really meant for the bottom line of AWP? We've heard some pretty amazing improvement statistics and operational effectiveness and efficiency, but what has that really translated to after the last couple of years for AWP as a business?
So just to add on to that back office piece, in addition to the reduction in validation, our invoicing cycle has decreased quite a bit. Previously, it took us more than 10 to 14 days once the job was completed for us to put the invoice together and send it to the customer, and now it takes us less than 5 days. And that's a huge win for the billing team, and also makes our finance team happy as well. And Mandy can speak more about the scheduling side and how that's really helped her team.
Yeah, we've seen a 57% decrease in the time it takes our folks to confirm their jobs, which, we went from a manual process where we were literally manually confirming these folks with phone calls and text messages, and we have an automated service. So, giving that time back to the folks here in the support center as well has been fantastic. So, just seeing our folks kind of anticipate that nightly schedule coming out at a certain time, and obviously waiting by the phone in some cases to hurry up and text back yes. So that's been great for them. Where we were seeing upwards of 7 people to create scheduling and dispatch jobs, we're now using 1. So that sounds extreme, but really it was completely unscalable prior. We had a lot of field management staff who always can find something else to do in the field and something their folks need, who were spending a lot of time wrapped up in the process of scheduling and dispatch. So being able not only to move that to centralization, but to optimize that so that it was a lot less hands-on has been fantastic.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I think we can wrap it up there. I'm not sure. We do have one question here that's come in more for AWP actually, and Ashish, you can probably answer this. But the question is, are you operating internationally or are you only in the United States? As far as I'm aware, Ashish, you are operating here in the U.S. Is there any color you can add on the area of operation that you have, and maybe your plans for future growth throughout the U.S. and potentially globally in the future? Love to hear about what the AWP of the future looks like for this question asker.
Yeah, absolutely. Right now we are just U.S. based. We operate out of 19 states from over 70 offices, and pretty much east of the Rockies from Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Connecticut down to Florida and Texas and all the states in between. We just very recently had an acquisition that had offices in Tennessee and Kentucky as well. Those were the two states that we did not have much coverage in, so now we have a good presence over there as well.
And a question from me, Ashish, because I'm just actually curious. Are you expanding nationally into regions that are friendly and encouraging of the types of services that you deliver? I imagine it's fairly wrapped around legislative process and the amount of security and control and safety that job sites have and construction sites have. Is there much difference from state to state or from area to area, or is it all fairly similar nationally across the U.S.?
There's quite a bit of a difference from state to state in terms of their compliance and regulation for traffic control and for all the construction that goes on the road. And that is a factor in our decision in selecting where we go next. But our focus in terms of growth has been growing adjacent to our existing territory and offices where we do not have presence, which allows us to not be too far from a nearby office. So a nearby office can support that growth and operation there while they're starting and stabilizing.
Cool. That's really interesting. Well, thanks so much, Ashish and Mandy. I really appreciate you being on this talk that we've had today. It's always wonderful to talk to our customers and better understand their business and their use case. I know, since working with you all, I've been more attentive to noticing and appreciating those individuals that stand on the side of the road and help me through a difficult traffic situation on the road, and you certainly pay more attention to them when you understand the use case, so I appreciate that. But thanks so much for talking to us today. Aya, I'll hand back over to you to wrap it up, but thanks, guys.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Mandy and Ashish. That was great. And thank you for everyone who dialed in and listened to the webinar. Like I promised, we will be sending the recording in just a few hours. Have a great day, and thanks, everyone. Bye.